So I want to welcome everybody to the September California Horticultural Society meeting. And a little later at 7 o'clock, we'll have Jason Sampson. And Kristen, will you introduce him?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So, well, Connie Levy, are you on the meeting yet?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Do you see just the picture of the
Right. Yes. Well, it took over 20 years to grow these grapes. I bought the plant in 1996, planted it in the ground when I moved to this house with an arbor in 1999. And this is the first time I've had edible grapes. They've tried before, but they tasted horrible.
Where are you at?
I'm in the Outer Mission in San Francisco.
Oh, okay, wow. Do you know what type of grape it is?
I think it's a champagne type grape.
Oh, well, you have your work cut out for you. Now you have to make some champagne so we can do it.
But they're seedless. They are seedless.
Oh, beautiful.
Nice.
And so it may be another 20 years and I may not be here the next time that they produce. So
How do they taste?
they're very tart,
Oh,
but okay.
there's probably that heat wave you had.
Probably. A couple of extra days of heat couldn't hurt.
Yeah,
for sure. Okay. So Robbie is up in Oregon, and she doesn't have a microphone, so she asked me to tell you about it. This is her Persian shield that has been relocated from Walnut Creek. She's now in Southern Oregon, and she moved up there 3 years ago. And she kept it in an untreated greenhouse for the past 3 years, though she thought she lost it when she had a huge snowstorm a year ago. But it came back, and to her surprise, put out a bloom this summer. And the first time it bloomed for her since she's grown it for the last 5 years. The greenhouse is cooled in late summer, August, that is our warmest month, but not treated in winter. And she was elated to see the bloom. She wanted to do this last month, but we hadn't quite got the logistics, so she's able to share it this month. And then she has a Eryngium, the blue sea holly, which draws the bees, and she loves the summer color, which is an interesting blue, kind of bright blue gray, and it's planted in her pollinator. So unfortunately, I don't think we can do any questions unless you might be able to do chats.
well, so just a comment. I grow this in my garden outside and it freezes to the ground every year, but it comes back every year. But it does bloom, although these flowers look large, but I grow it for the foliage.
Yeah, foliage is very sure. I probably should have put foliage in there. Okay. And this is Sean O'Hara's. Sean, are you on? Oh,
I am here, yes.
okay. I better see if
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
So the plant on the left is Oxalis gigantea. This plant was given to me by a friend who was leaving the area. I'm still trying to figure out its growth cycle and flowering cycle. It seems pretty random so far. That it's probably due to it being from the Atacama Desert of Chile, which gets very little rainfall, and who knows when it might come. So it probably just, makes do with what it gets.
We saw this in Chile, and it looked very healthy, but the ones we saw were it was very dry year for them at all. I don't think they had any winter water that year.
Yeah.
Last November, and there was a little few blooms on it, but hardly any leaves, just a few.
Yeah, this plant will go completely leafless and look pretty much dead suddenly. It's given me a few scares, and then suddenly it comes back. So it's quite interesting. It's for some reason it's confused with these other two species that are on the right, which are also from South America, but from different areas. Those two species on the right are sometimes considered to be closely related enough to be a subspecies of each other, but the jury is still out on that. The Teneriensis that is shown there, I got from Archie during one Cal Hort meeting, and he knew it under the name of the one below,
So they're
the
similar.
Herere. Yeah, there's a lot of information on the internet that, you know, says it in all different ways. So these are little known species. There's not a lot of work available about them, even though this gigantea has been known since 1845. But they're in remote places, so I guess they haven't been explored as much and stuff.
And this is Sean's as well, the Ripsalis.
So this plant I also got from a Cal Hort meeting as a cutting. Somebody brought it in, and I think they wanted an ID. I was curious about it, and it struck really quickly for me and grew into this plant. When I researched it, I discovered that it is the only cactus species that is not only native to the Americas, but is also found in places like South Africa, Madagascar, and Sri Lanka. And that has kept people trying to figure out how on earth did that happen. A clue to this might be that whenever this puts on berries for us, the birds gobble them right up. So they're very fond of these little white berries, which look like mistletoe berries. And so that seems to be one of the leading ideas, is that through bird migration. But the jury's still out. Some people feel that it maybe was transported by early mariners who were traveling around the southern hemisphere and such. So, but it's an interesting little plant. You know, it's got this very dramatic, drippy habit. So it requires a careful position. This is growing under a bush, hanging under a bush in our backyard where it gets partial shade and water whenever I remember to splash some on it. So.
Thank you, Sean. This is Kristen's. I thought I had this. Yeah, here it is better.
Yeah.
Those are the same, right?
Yes. So this is Gossypium thurberi. It comes out of the Arizona desert. It is in the Malvaceae. I never bring it in because, of course, this picture is taken during the day. Now I'm beginning to like Zoom because now I can show off my mallows a little bit. At any rate, it usually blooms in the desert starts blooming during the monsoon season, which can often start in July. So for me, it doesn't start blooming, however, until now. So it's an autumn bloomer. And I think it has to do with the fact that we have warm days, cool nights, because all my desert plants that do very well where we are don't really begin to behave differently, more like in the spring, initially like the Palo Verde or the Parkinsonia culeata. But this one, because it normally blooms in the desert in the summer during the rains, I just assume that it's waiting for a certain amount of heat. And it starts blooming in September for me. Next.
Okay.
Gossypium, by the way, is a cotton tribe, just so you know. So there, on the left is Ruellia britannia. I have 4 different kinds. This is a paler blue one. And the reason I'm showing this is I have had my first deer invasion in a very big way this year. I never had deer in the 33 years I've lived here. And I used Jan Hamby's spray, which is amazing. It's milk, eggs, vegetable oil, and detergent. And they stayed away from my mallows, which are candy to deer. But they never touched my Acanthaceae. And, you know, we all have, well, if you have an older garden like I do, Acanthus mollis, which is gorgeous, but it's Greek and probably the namesake of the Acanthaceae family. And I realized they don't go after any of my Canthaceae. So they don't go after the Persian shield, which we just saw. They don't go after the Ruellias, and I have a lot of other different kinds of Acanthaceae. I'm not sure if you live in Orinda or in the highly infested deer areas, they won't eat that because I've seen them eat cannas in Orinda. But at any rate, I thought it was interesting. And again, it loves the heat. And it is a bit of a pest after a while. You have to dig it out, which is why I have so many available for Cal Hort or anybody who wants to come over.
Yay.
And then I thought that since we are talking about food plants tonight, I would show you the elephant amaranth, or Amaranthus versicolor, and then it's called elephant amaranth. I just read that this was brought by the Germans to the United States. And this plant, you can harvest the seed and eat the seed. It's a true amaranth. And you can also eat the leaves. So they brought it for the sake of eating. I, however, love the shape of the flower. And I gave one to a woman who used to be a member of Cal Hort called Sharon Stone. And her husband, she loves it. Her friends love it. Her husband hates it because it looks like the plant is giving you the finger. But it is fun to touch. It's very fuzzy. And the seeds are black. I've never bothered. I mean, my goal is to get it into my main garden because it really grows well in my vegetable garden, but Dick gets irritated with me because it's all over the tomatoes. But it's a wonderful autumn color for the garden, and I highly recommend it if you can get it going. I finally started getting it going in my front garden, which has taken me years, but yeah, we never talk about annuals anyway, so now we did.
So Kristen, the Ruellia.
Yes.
I once ID'd that for the Mediterranean Garden Society, one of their forums, and the secretary at the time, who was a British woman, when I gave her the name, she thought I was having her on. You know, a joke about rule Britannia.
Oh.
She wouldn't believe me that that was actually the name.
Oh, really? Very interesting.
Okay, anything else? Anybody else? Okay, now Mark, you're on.
He's there. He's been commenting.
I gotta unmute myself. So I'm not growing the one on the left. I wish. Mine is a sapling about, I don't know, 15, 16 feet, and maybe 2 and a little bit inches wide, maybe less. But it's starting to show a little bit of that green color, but we shall see. And it's questionable how hardy it'll be. Everything I read says Hawaii, San Diego. So I'm not exactly that. I do have it growing right up next to a Cryptomeria that's larger. And I think it's going to get a little overhead sheltering. And it's been in the ground 3 or 4 years now. It was slow to get started, but it's right above the creek. So maybe it's got its roots down where it's happy now.
Cool.
We saw that in Hawaii in a little preserve, and it was absolutely gorgeous. It is.
All the pictures I see, yeah.
Yeah, such a pretty tree.
Yeah, it's a beauty. Hopefully yours will get some color on it. You got a little color already. Okay.
Oh, and this is an obsession from the Berkeley Botanical Garden in their entry garden. I've been looking at this fuchsia gum forever. And it's, I was, on Friday, Leah and I went up to the garden and I looked into the, sales area, and I got both this and I got this one. Oh, and I got that wonderful Hakea that Troy McGregor grows in from Australia, and it's just, I love that plant. So I scored 2 great plants in one day. Now, if I can just keep them going, we shall see. And this one isn't particularly frost sensitive. It goes down to zone 7, I think. I mean, this fuchsia gum.
You bought it at Berkeley Botanic Gardens?
I did just last Friday. They had
Oh.
one of each of this and that Hakia. Oh, what was the name of it? But it was wonderful.
Only one?
They had one of each, and I couldn't believe it. And it's like I said, okay, so what's a green dot? $20. I thought, okay, well, I can at least get one. And I said, but what's the blue dot? $8. I said, I'll take them both. Yeah. I think the fuchsia gum was less. Yeah. And this is right up at the, growing into the brick. Well, above the brick there is the top of my, the other one, the rainbow gum. So this fence is 6 feet and the rose arbor might be a few more feet. And then this is planted a few feet down the slope toward the creek. So it's getting a little altitude and you can see the Critomeria reaching out to shelter it a little bit. I think in the end it will, it'll be above the Critomeria.
What is it?
These shiny leaves on the top, just into the sky, above the sky.
Here?
Oh, I can do that, huh? Yeah. Oh, you won't see mine though. Yeah, that's it. Those are the leaves of the rainbow gum.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought we were looking at that thing.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
I got away from the other one, didn't I?
Okay. Here's your
And that's that beautiful Hekia. I took the picture at Troy McGregor's garden after we came to your garden that day, Ellen, and then this was our first bonus garden, and I just fell in love with this instantly. I think it's called pincushion Hekia, and I think I like the foliage every bit as much as the flowers, but I love them both. And so here are the two pots I got from the Berkeley Botanical Garden. The little one leaning over is the fuchsia gum, and the taller one is this guy, the Hekia. Or Hekia? I'm not sure how you say that.
I believe it's Hakia.
Hekia, okay. Ooh, and another eucalyptus. Whose is this?
Okay, these are mine. I have a fuchsia or Eucalyptus forestiana one, the fuchsia flowered eucalyptus. I don't know if you remember, but you were at the Mark, you were at the Berkeley Botanic Gardens, and I was at the Berkeley Botanic Gardens, and we were both looking at the fuchsia flowering.
Exactly. I remember.
And I was at Annie's, and she had one in a 4-inch.
Mm-hmm.
I bought it, and it bloomed last year, but it's
a different one, isn't it?
Corey's, which I like as well.
Yes,
these are the red-capped eucalyptus, and these little red caps flip off, and then these brilliant yellow stamens all come out, and the bees just love it. And every once in a while, a hummingbird will come in, but I don't think they get a whole lot of nectar or anything because they come and take a look, and then they take off. So this is how big it is. I think, was that maybe 5 years ago, I think? Mm-hmm. And the one that bloomed last year is about here, and it was only one, and now it's got a whole little bunch there. I'm happy with this, but I still want one of the fuchsia flowered ones.
Yeah, that one you can squeeze in because it's tiny. You know, it'll stay 10 feet if you live a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's and I'm sad to hear that they only had one, I guess, when you bought yours. Dang it. Okay, so the reason I have
Ellen, are you planning to put in the ground? Eucalyptus?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I can cut it to the ground, but it's evidently a stump sprouter. But okay, so the crassula, I was sitting out there drawing this thing, and I didn't realize it was fragrant. I was sitting there, and nothing else is in bloom, and I'm sitting there drawing it, and I'm getting these wafts of this beautiful fragrance. I'm going, and I'm looking around trying to identify it and figure out what it is. And then, you know, this was the only thing that was blooming, so I got my nose down there, and it was so fragrant. I just loved it. So now well, it's almost past now, but every time I went by, I had to do a deep need bend so I could smell the flowers. It was really nice. I didn't realize it was fragrant. So that's my discovery there. And then I had a couple things. All the South African bulbs are starting to bloom. And so I have Brugsvigia literalis, which is I think this is the first time this has bloomed. I have Brugsvigia Josephinae, which is a huge one that Ruth Bancroft has a big one, has an old one, and the Berkeley Botanic Gardens has, I don't know, I think there's 3 of them there. But those, I had about 2 feet or so wide. This one's not quite as big, but very similar flowers. And then, a couple years ago, my neighbors and I went down to Bill the Bulb Baron's place, which I'm sad to say that he passed away in February. But it's interesting because I have these that bloomed much earlier, a little after the regular Amaryllis belladonna. And then these, which are this one, bloomed a little later. And these are still in bloom, but they're really showing. I kind of like how that extends the season. And I think that's the end of the show. Actually, it's very good timing. I see that, let me admit a couple people in here. I see that Jason has joined us. I had one announcement, which I forgot to print out. Oh, I know what it was. So we are going to be sending out membership renewals via email. So those that pay for the bulletin via regular US Post will get that through US Post, but everybody else will get email notifications of membership renewal. Well, let's not keep Jason waiting. It's 4 a.m. South African time, folks. So we owe big thanks to Jason for getting up so early in the morning, or maybe he stayed up so late in the evening. But Kristen, I'll let you go ahead and introduce Jason. Oh.
I see that Jason is sitting in a shadow, probably because he's not feeling great, because I know morning is not his favorite time. But I feel very fortunate to know Jason Sampson. He is one of the greatest plants people I know in the world. He's the guy we brought in because he did this amazing project using stone in South Africa and hung them on the engineering department walls of the University of Pretoria. And I went to see it, and it was just, it's massive, it's gorgeous. I've seen it twice now at a much more mature level. I view it as extremely successful. And he didn't just do stone walls, then he did all this water garden around a building, and the water was purified. And I swear the man's mind cannot stop working. And now he has just taught a class, which I saw that he was doing, I think for the International Plant Propagators, on eating from the Veld. So I've become very interested in foraging even in my own life. And I never thought about how you eat the plants in South Africa. I mean, we all know about aloe being having tremendous healing properties, but eating it is a whole nother ball of wax. So I wanted to have him come back and talk about eating these plants, because eating is something that is very interesting to a lot of younger people, and I think it should be interesting to all of us. So at any rate, I think Nikki, his wife, has joined this meeting this time, hi Nikki, if you can hear me. I'm still friends with them on Facebook. They're very funny people. They also have a menagerie of animals, which just blows your mind. I don't know how they have time to do all that they do, but I'd like to have you, if you could just all clap that are showing your faces, because a lot of you aren't, but clap and thank them for coming. Thank you for getting up early.
Thank you, everybody, and I'm honored to be here. I do apologize because I have noticed that there isn't any light on this silly little webcam of mine. So I'm not used to actually doing Zoom meetings this early in the morning, so my bad, I do apologize. But hopefully the photos in my presentation will make up for that. Let me get started right away.
Oh, we see you better now.
I am I'm extremely fortunate to work for the University of Pretoria, and I'm blessed to be allowed to get involved in all of these exciting projects that we actually do, and even more blessed in that people listen to some of my crazier ideas. I'm going to talk to you about something that's one of my newer projects. It's very close to my heart, and that is what we call the Future Africa Foraging Garden. Okay, so this particular project, and I'm just going to swing into the background of it. The University of Pretoria is a multi-campus university. We have between 8 and 9 campuses, depending on how you count them, across Gauteng, which is one of the provinces in South Africa, one of the central provinces, on the Highveld. I don't know if you guys know much about the geography of South Africa. So one of those campuses is our old experimental farm, which is about 2 kilometers away from the Hatfield campus, which is where the Botanical Gardens is. The Botanical Gardens is the, shall we say, my official job. That's when I don't get to interfere with all these other delightful projects. That's what I manage. So we have an experimental farm, like many universities with agricultural degrees and so forth, and animal husbandry degrees. And it was an old donation to the university, I think in the 30s and 40s. It is a large farm, and it is one of the largest open spaces still left within Pretoria. So there's quite a lot of space on there, and when the Future Africa campus was decided on and planned, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that just now. It was obviously placed on the future on the experimental farm campus. So because the experimental farm is managed by the department to which I belong, the Department of Plant and Soil Sciences, they approached us for a few ideas on the actual campus plan. And of course, the idea was, well, you guys are sitting on a farm. Okay, so perhaps we should have a little bit of a farm vibe going. And even more than that, we are an African university. We are working in Africa. It should be African plants and an African farm vibe, as it were. So a lot of background here, but Future Africa, in short, is meant to be a shall we say sorry, I stop with as once I get into the swing of things. It's sometimes difficult to give a presentation on Zoom. But Future Africa is meant to foster interdisciplinary research. We are a research-led university. Anything and everything that I can do as the curator of the Botanical Gardens and the Botanical Collection of the university is meant to support, inspire, and provide material for our researchers. So any project that I get involved in, I always come with that mindset. I always come and say, well, how can I expand the horizons of what is available to our researchers and give them ideas, things to look at. And this is one of the reasons why Future Africa was a very exciting project for me, because we're going to be hosting researchers from across the continent and across the world in an installation that's meant to make them think about working together. And that's one of the reasons why we thought, well, let's bring in African crops. So this project was, the inception of this project was about 5 years ago. In fact, I think, Kristen, when I was with you guys in California, we were already starting to talk about this project. I don't know if I dropped any hints, but at that stage, the African Orphan Crop consortium was just getting off the ground, and that was led by Microsoft, Mars Corporation, a few other very large corporations. So the point of the African Orphan Crop Consortium was to foster specifically genetic research at that stage into African orphan crops, but it has expanded into best practice cultivation, etc. So we thought, well, you know, if there is international interest in African orphan crops, maybe we should start at looking at just the orphan crops as the landscape of future Africa. So just a quick background to orphan crops in Africa, and I'm sure in many other parts of the world, with history being what it was, a lot of traditional food crops were sidelined with the introduction of things like maize and potatoes, Western farming methodology. And in Africa, that really did affect, in Africa, that sidelined very, very many foods and very many traditional ways of gathering and eating foods. So orphan crops are one thing. Then you've got foraging plants as well. Now, Africa is an extremely big place. I do have quite a famous map of the actual size of Africa a little bit later in the presentation. But just to come down to 100 orphan crops, I think was difficult enough for the Orphan Crop Consortium. And there were also a few plants that have been introduced into Africa and had become important in historical time as a food crop, or locally important in certain regions of Africa, that you will see as a background in this presentation. You'll see there's the original 100 crop list of orphan crops. I don't think that picture exists anymore on their website, but I downloaded this one, I think, in 2016. But as you see, there are actually quite a few introduced species as well. So what I did was I had a look at that, and I assessed that according to my own knowledge of what is important, particularly in Southern Africa. Dropped a couple of things that may actually be invasive species, such as a puntia. Although I know a puntia is an important food plant, I didn't feel like stretching the envelope quite that much. Puntias are very bad weeds in South Africa, up to the point that we've released biocontrol agents for them. And then started putting out feelers for some of the rarer things, and we managed to put together quite a few plants that I've been looking for decades, quite frankly, in this collection. So, just to summarize, the idea of the foraging garden at Future Africa was to have a living collection of as many orphan and indigenous wild food crops as possible in one place, as an aesthetic feature and a beautiful garden, but available for researchers and for actual use. Okay, so humans evolved as hunter-gatherers, and according to the recent African origin of modern human species theory, we evolved in Africa. Okay, we evolved to get our food from the veld. Okay, and many aspects of our biology and even our psychology lend itself to that kind of thinking and that kind of behavior. It is, and I know that it is becoming a huge cultural movement within the United States. Your foraging foods. It is becoming a big cultural movement in South Africa as well. Not to the point where it is becoming a conservation issue, but I do know that it is becoming a conservation issue with certain species elsewhere in the world. Their plants are not cultivated and they're foraged out of the veld. And also for medicine, not just for food, it can become a conservation issue. I'm sure you guys can think of examples. Okay, so part of the Future Africa campus is we've got conference facilities, but we also have facilities for accommodation for researchers and promising students. And there is actually an on-site kitchen with a chef. So that lends itself to greater opportunities. We have also teamed up with the consumer science department, and they're forever busy on my campus looking for stuff to play with. So that's always fun. And we've also reached out to local chef consortiums and clubs and so forth to get them involved as well. I've also just now interested a local craft gin maker in some of the botanicals that we grow there, but that's something we can talk about a little bit later. Okay. So, and 2020 COVID has slowed a lot of these, a lot of our outreach and promotional activities down a little bit, as I think it's slowed everything down. It's been a funny year, but a part of our promotional programs is to try and promote this campus as an example of the ability of an urban landscape to provide food for fauna and people. The campus is on our experimental farm. We do have open areas. Pretoria is a fantastic city because we have the Michalisberg running through it as a green spine. I don't know how many of you guys have ever visited Pretoria, but it is an amazing, it sits at the juncture between two great biomes within Southern Africa, the low veld and the high veld. The Michalisberg is one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world. It's something like 2 billion years old. And it runs right through the center of the city. So we have, and all the way up to, all the way up into Rustenburg, the Pilansberg. So it's a green spine right into the heart of a modern African city. And then we have ridge lines to the south, which have ecological linkages to the Michalisberg. And one of those ridge lines is actually just behind Future Africa. We have a lot of wildlife on our campus. In fact, we have a lot of hyraxes that have moved into Future Africa, somewhat to my chagrin, but they're not causing any damage, thankfully, but they're around. We have black eagles flying over Future Africa looking for the rock hyraxes, which is thrilling. So there is that element to it as well. This is not laid out or planted like a vegetable garden. It is meant to showcase African plants in an aesthetic feature. I've tried to focus more on Southern African plants, but we do have a lot of African plants from further north as well. We use the resource to teach as well as do research. And like I said, I keep mentioning it is meant to be an aesthetic feature. I'm sorry, guys. No, maybe that's better. So we have approximately 200 species of fruits, nuts, leafy greens, herbs, tubers. Some of them are completely wild. Others have been historically used as crops. There are a few exotics. I have things like taro. Taro has been in Africa for 1,000 years. It is an important African crop. So whether or not it comes from East Asia actually doesn't matter. But the landscape is 90% indigenous or African. My inclusion was based on traditional use as well as research potential and as well as aesthetics. In the presentation, there's just a little a snippet of my original spreadsheets that I worked on with some of the species lists. You can see there's quite a few interesting things in here. I have already received emails inquiring about Plectranthus esculentus. I know it's an exciting species. It took me about 10 years to find material, but it's growing well. There's still one or two things that I'm looking for, such as the African mulberry That only penetrates South Africa right far in the very far northern coastal regions, and I haven't managed to get any material yet, but we'll get to it. The collection grows every day. Just to give you an idea of the kind of size, the modern map projections tend to distort sizes of continents. This is how big Africa is. This is the kind of space for peoples and their plants that one actually has. So if I say the collections keep growing, they do. There's always huge room for expansion. Our climate may be a limiting factor. I'm finding a little bit of trouble growing African rice. It doesn't like our cooler winters. We're not freezing cold, but we might as well be as far as African rice is concerned. African rice is quite an exciting species. It's a dryland rice. It doesn't need paddies to grow in. Unfortunately, it also seems to need warm winters. A few of the design elements that have been included in the campus, Kristen alluded to my rainwater harvesting systems this is on the main campus. This is the first big rainwater harvesting system. We have others since, one of them being a Future Africa. The green walls also been alluded to. We are playing with green facades and vertical gardening at Future Africa. We have got rehabilitation projects going on at the University of Pretoria. Some of the material from there is being used at Future Africa and being included. We do have a small demonstration garden using only local biodiversity plants at Future Africa. It's being used for research. It's also the only section of that entire garden that isn't 100% edible or useful in some way. Obviously, we have our recycling and sustainability initiatives huge at the University of Pretoria. Any material that we discard on green material we discard on any of our campuses is composted and then at our own facility and then put back into the landscape. We do have a few cycads at Future Africa as well. And believe it or not, the Khoisan people did have methodologies for processing and eating cycads. They involved running water and fermentation. It's not something I would recommend. You have to draw a sharp distinction between foraging plants and plants that one would probably only utilize under much more constrained conditions. I suspect cycads being one of them. They're violently toxic at the best of times. I've mentioned the biodiversity garden. Okay, so I drew up the species list, but the detailed design work were the people mentioned in this slide. I was very fortunate to work with them. Both companies were very excited about the concepts, included us every step of the way, and did a great job with the final analysis. This is just a big quick site plan of what you're dealing with at Future Africa. Huge conference centers, the on-site dining hall, conference facilities, accommodation facilities. It's a beautiful big site. This is actually the garden areas that I'm working with. This is the rainwater harvesting dam. This dark green area is the biodiversity garden. Absolutely everything else here is devoted to edible or medicinal plants. You've really got fantastic microclimates, great specialized planting sites. One of the reasons why Pretoria was founded where it was is because the soil is so fertile. We have wonderful soils in Pretoria, and we increase that fertility by using our own compost. There is a very good maintenance budget. We now have a dedicated curator for the collection on site. Young and very vibrant young lady by the name of Lena. She manages the site, she manages the crops as well as the foraging plants, and she is responsible for educating and providing material to the kitchens. Nobody's just allowed to run around. Okay, so probably the part of the presentation you guys were looking forward to the most is just a few of the species that have been planted on site. I'm going to start with one of my favorite plants in Africa, and that is Sterculium murex. And I'm going to say, Kristen, I'm sure you're going to love this plant as well because it is Malvaceae. This
Of
plant,
course.
this plant is very restricted distribution in and around Nelspruit, Barberton. There are a few sites in the Kruger Park where it grows. It grows on the granite inselbergs that are characteristic of that landscape. It's got a very interesting life strategy that involves huge pods and big seeds that fall on the ground and burst, and then the rocks get scattered. The seeds get scattered amongst the rocks, germinate immediately. They make a big tuberous cortex that survives the dry winter, and then it only actually sprouts above ground parts in spring. Lovely plant. And also, if you are in Nelspruit around February and March, you are fighting off every herbivorous animal and person imaginable for these seeds. The common name for the species is low-felt chestnut. Those seeds are oily, those seeds are sweet. They have a very soft shell, and they roast beautifully. It is completely undomesticated, and the roots are also apparently edible. It's a lovely tree. It's a blossom tree, as you can see from the picture here. Murex is a Latin word or a Latin name for a spiked wall club, and as you can see, these pods are quite spiky. So yeah, this is a plant that I was very excited to include in the landscape. I did a lot of work in the low-felt in my salad days, and I love this tree. And I can plant more of them. I actually can.
How large does it get?
It's a big tree. Are you guys familiar with Cassonia?
That's the
genus
cabbage
Cassonia?
tree?
Yes.
Yes.
It is somewhat reminiscent of a cabbage tree in its juvenile years. It has palmate leaves. It'll get to about 12 meters at its full size.
And what do the nuts taste like?
They
Almonds?
reminiscent. Yeah, I think the closest thing I can think of is to a very oily almond.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they are extremely nice. But like I say, the soft shell is quite interesting. One of the challenges with the species was to figure out exactly how recalcitrant it is. When it drops its pods, it's the rainy season in the low-felt. So the place is as wet as anything. Up in Gauteng, our rains are not as heavy. So I've realized that when those seeds hit the ground, you need to plant them immediately. They dry out in hours. So I think it is one of the barriers to potential commercialization of the plant, because we have to freeze the seed for later use. One of those things.
Interesting, thank you.
Okay. Another awesome species is this Tylosema esculenta. Now I'm sure you guys are familiar with Bauhinia. This used to be a part of the genus Bauhinia, but it's been given its own species now. It's actually a ground cover with a large tuberous cortex. Okay, the beans are extremely nutritious and were a traditional food source for the hunter-gatherer Khoisan. The roots are also edible. Okay, this plant is in active research, and there is potential for ennoblement. So watch this space. You never know. It'll grow on virtually no water. It grows everywhere in the Kalahari. It is It is quite an exciting plant, and as you can see, very pretty flowers as well. Okay, other
What's
cool
cold
thing.
what's its cold tolerance?
I would reckon pretty high. Often these suffrotexes will just get nailed back to the underground parts and sprout back again in spring. Sorry, can I continue? Yeah. Okay. So other things that are quite fun. Obviously, fig trees are an important food plant virtually anywhere in the world where they grow. In Africa, we have broom cluster figs. In South Africa, we have 2 species and one subspecies of what we call broom cluster figs. As you can see, they make specialized fruiting branches. Those branches can actually be rooted as rather nice bonsai. So if you actually pull them off and you root them, they make leaves. So they are true branches. But when they're on the tree, they function to make fruit. So these are part of the same general species grouping as the Indian broom cluster fig. You can pickle the young figs, or you can use the ripe figs as jams and so forth. They are not bad. I also believe that Ficus sycamoris has got a very long history of domestication in the northern parts of Africa, up to the point that many scholars believe that it might be the fig tree of the Bible. Certainly, a 30-meter tree makes a lot more sense to climb if you want to look over a crowd. Anyway, so this is Ficus sycamoris, subspecies sycamoris. It's got relatively small fruits. I have managed to get Ficus sycamoris subspecies Gnaphallocarpa from Namibia, which has got much, much bigger fruits. They have not fruited for me yet. This is Ficus sur, incredibly attractive fruit. Now, what's pretty cool about both of these species is they do not have a regular fruiting cycle, and they fruit multiple times a year. So even if you're not using the fruit for anything, man, you do not understand how many birds that these trees will bring. You know, I have planted Ficus sur at home for that simple reason. We have green pigeons, any fruit-eating bird you can possibly think of, and insect eaters as well. But you need space for Ficus sycamoris specifically. Ficus sur is a little bit smaller. Okay, another cool one. This is one that I think most of you have not heard about. This is Mondia whitey. Mondia whitey is a forest liane. It is or was considered part of the Apocynaceae. Apocynaceae are generally fairly toxic. This plant, however, is not. The leaves are edible and are a traditional spinach substitute in parts of its range. I have eaten the leaves, they're rather nice. They have an interesting texture. What makes this plant exciting for me is a number of things. One, it grows extremely fast. 2, it's very neat. It'll cling to whatever it's given to cling to, and it won't misbehave too much, at least for its few years of life, although then it starts climbing into close by trees. But the bark of the plant contains vanilla-like compounds. It tastes like what you would expect a cross of vanilla and ginger would taste like. It is a traditional Zulu medicinal plant. It's used as an appetite increaser, but we are starting now to see a lot of interest in local craft gin and distilling companies in the flavor compounds of this plant. I myself actually will put strips of bark in a little bit of neutral liquor with 1 or 2 coffee beans as an aperitif. It is very nice. I find it is also somewhat of an energy booster as well. As you can see, it's got lovely flowers. It has a typical Apocynaceae twinned pods. I believe the seeds are toxic, so at least one part of the plant is probably something you shouldn't be using. Okay. What list of African fruit is complete without marulas? We are in the marula belt in Pretoria, just literally. They grow well for us. We have a couple of big trees out on the experimental farm. I'm sure you guys have encountered this, if only as a liqueur. They're great to eat fresh as well. We do have remnants of an old ennoblement project on the experimental farm with bigger fruit than the wild average, and we're looking at propagating those as well. But yeah, so marulas, I love them. They normally in season in February, March. You can actually smell the ripe fruit. So if you grew up eating them, you know it's time for a treat. Okay, this is Plectranthus esculentus. It's part of a group of 3 species that are traditional root tubers in Africa. The other 2 are cultivated further north. It is a funny looking plant. It is quite small actually for making tubers. Like it only grows to about knee high. It has tiny yellow flowers which are not actually that showy for a Plectranthus. And then of course you've got these lovely tubers. They taste a bit like a minty potato. They were virtually locally extinct in South Africa as short a time ago as 5 years ago, but we certainly have a lot of them now. They're easy enough to propagate. They're not as productive as things like carrots and potatoes, which is probably why people do not grow them as much as they used to. But they are an amazing part of our collection, and I'm very, very chuffed to have them. Okay, a few other edible plants that I could not resist, but include something which you guys must detest in California, and that is Oxalis pescaprae. In South Africa, we have an Afrikaans name for them. We call them suurtjies. Suurtjies means sours. They do come from South Africa. They're indigenous here. They are not particularly weedy for me in a summer rainfall area. I grow them. If I don't want them to grow there anymore, I just withhold water for a winter. They don't come back. I remember seeing them in California absolutely everywhere. So guys, eat the weeds, and you can use the tubers, and you can eat the leaves as well and the flowers. They have a delightful sour taste. This plant over here is Cucumis metuliferus. This is our African wild cucumber. It's an extremely rampant plant, extremely fruitful. It is being farmed, I know, in New Zealand under the trade name of Kiwano. It tastes like a sour cucumber. It's very nice. If you let it ripen, it tastes like a melon. We do have a patch of them. You can grow it either as a creeper or as a ground cover. Another great African fruit is African mangosteen, delightful plant. When they're in fruit, you have to move to get them because everybody wants them. Portulacaria afra. There was a bit of hype a few months ago about its carbon sequestration abilities. It is apparently incredibly good at sequestering carbon. It is also quite nice in the salad because of its metabolism. It sequesters malic acid during the night. So it is most sour in the morning. In the afternoon, it's lost most of its sourness. It's a fruity sour, so that's what's quite nice about this. Then an heirloom vegetable that hails from another continent in Africa is muchaina. It is grown specifically in places like Venda and further north in Zambia. It is a variety of Chinese mustard, but It has been grown as an heirloom long enough to be somewhat distinctive. There may be a little bit of hybridization involved. It is one of the few leaf vegetables I actually grow at home because it has a meaty, mustardy taste, and it is divine. Okay, a few other interesting bits and pieces. So we have a dozen or so species of salvia in southern Africa. This is a horticultural hybrid called Bees Blue. We have discovered through experimentation that it actually tastes almost exactly like Salvia officinalis without big hairy leaves. It's got small leaves which are not particularly hairy. So it's quite a nice plant to include in the collections as a herb. I'm sure you guys have seen this in cultivation. It is cultivated all over the world. It is a Ponageton distachius. It is a traditional Khoisan food, and it is a traditional Afrikaans food and Cape Malay food. We eat it. We eat the flowers specifically in stews. It's called waterblommetjie breedie, but you can eat the leaves and the tubers as well. Okay. Other fascinating plants we have in the collection. You guys know water chestnuts. We have it growing all throughout the eastern parts of Africa. It is not known to be used much as a food crop, but we're trying to promote its use. Kristen referred to aloes, and I'm going to just very quickly here, somebody who works a lot with aloes, put a caution in. Very, very few aloes can be used in a culinary sense. Do not experiment. Some of them are toxic, and others are just really unpalatable. Here's one of the few examples that is actually great. This is just a yellow selection of aloe arborescens, the Krantz aloe. These flower buds are actually edible. They don't have much taste, but you can use them. Another horrible weed that you guys have in California is Carpobrotus. This is a traditional food plant in the Western Cape, to the point where you can actually buy the dried fruit at markets. We call it the Afrikaans name is fakie. Fakie means fig, so a sour fig basically. So keep an eye out. You peel them, there's a very small fruit in the middle, and it is quite tasty. That can also be dried out. Okay, so just an example of some of the menus that have been developed by our chef and the students at Future Africa. My wife and I were very privileged to attend this particular meal. As you can see, here's Portulacaria afra leaves. Aloe arborescens buds in a excuse me, in a amuse bush. I don't even know if I pronounced that properly. Okay, so that was actually a starter that looks like a pudding. You can see we garnished with variegated nasturtium leaves just for a little bit of pretty, but every single last ingredient here except the meat came out of the gardens at Future Africa, and I was very impressed with the results. Okay, just a few headlines, recent headlines. Some of the we have Chef Jalele is very active in playing with the ingredients that we provide for him, and can actually keep us on our toes, because it's you want to keep on giving him things to play with. So, you know, there's still things in process. Lena and I are working quite hard at the moment and have worked over lockdown on some of our signages, our interpretive routes, research. I'm forever promoting new things that we're planting, saying, guys, what do you need? What do you want us to plant? What do you want to use that's already planted? Outreach and community engagement, increase the collections. And, so I want to thank you for listening to me ramble on, and I'd like to open the floor to any questions.
I have a question. Does the chef use other ingredients besides things that are in the garden?
Yes, of course. You know, I mean, you know, it would be limiting to keep him just on what's in the garden, although
Yeah.
there are 200 ingredients. But you know, for instance, that menu that I showed you, there was kudu was the meat. So we don't have kudus running around on our campuses. So obviously that would have been brought in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Dick Turner asked, are there any edible plants from the fynbos?
A fynbos, Aponogeton Stachios is actually a fynbos plant. Oxalis pescaprae is a fynbos plant. So is the Carpobrotus. So yes, the thing about fynbos is it's generally a resource poor environment. So yeah, you'll find that the edible plants are few and far between, but the traditional peoples of the area do very well know how to use what they have down there. We are somewhat limited in having a very strict seasonal rainfall. Our rain is summer. That's what we get. Our winters are very dry. And fynbos, a lot of fynbos violently objects to being wet in summer and dry in winter. So I have to be selective as to which fynbos we do grow.
So I have a question. Why, you say you're growing you have animal husbandry, but have you worked on, I mean, the bucks in South Africa, I never saw so many different bucks in my life, and you guys eat all of it too, which really surprised me. So, but have they domesticated them, or do they still just hunt them?
Look, you know, that's something of a tricky question to ask. I'm of the opinion that the second you start getting color morphs of any animal, you're talking about a domestication event. So for most of our antelope, there exist color morphs. So, you know, one thing that I was so impressed at in the United States was that you have so much wilderness, like true honest to God wilderness. We have amazing wild spaces, but much of it is managed and we don't have a lot of big wildlife or megafauna running around that isn't part of, say, a game farm or a managed situation. So it's a fine line. We do have places like Kruger Park. I mean, Kruger Park's the size of Belgium. So those animals, those animals would then be wild. But if you have an intensively managed game farm, perhaps, certainly, like I say, the color morph issue for me is a clincher. But I don't know if that answered any of your questions.
What about that plectranthus root? How do you prepare it? And what is, and you say it tastes like a minty potato, but is the mint overwhelming in it, or is it subtle?
It's subtle. It's a small and it's a fiddly root in the same sense as a Jerusalem artichoke. So I'm sure you guys have eaten Jerusalem artichoke. You have to break it apart. You have to clean it. The skin rubs off underwater, so you do that. And then you can boil it, or you can mash it. You can even fry it up.
How long does it take to get to edible size?
It's
And
a
can you
seasonal
just,
crop.
what's that?
Sorry, it's a seasonal crop. You plant it in spring, you harvest it in autumn.
Oh, so pretty quick, okay.
Yeah. However, in your climate, I wouldn't leave it in the soil. It's a bushveld species, so it likes it dry in winter. I suspect the tubers will rot.
But you don't know if they'll rot.
No, I'm pretty sure they'll rot.
Good
Okay.
drainage.
Yeah, good drainage. Or just lift them and store them. I mean, you see
Oh.
the size of that. See the size of that cluster of tubers. and you can break those tubers into 2 centimeter pieces and plant. You can grow the plant from cuttings as well, which is something you can't really do with potatoes, for instance.
So when you prepare them, do you mash them like potatoes, or do you I know you say you fried them, but easy prep?
Easy prep is boil and mash.
And then the final question I have is, do you have to plant them from the tuber, or do you also plant from seed?
Look, I'm only flowering them for the first time this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. So I don't even know if it forms seed. It might not. Some of these cultigens that have been grown for a very long time vegetatively don't. And it's a funny plectranthus in a couple of different ways. The one is the yellow flowers, which is bizarre in the genus. They're normally white, pinkish or blue. The second is even weirder because the plant sort of semi-dies back in winter, but it doesn't go completely. So a few of the branches actually stay alive. And those are the ones that flower in spring. So I'm watching it now flowering. There might be seed. I'm hoping there's seed.
You'll find out.
You only found one clone, I gather. You only
I think I've got a number of clones here. There's definitely variation.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Bart said you skipped over the references slide.
Sure. It's absolutely no problem. Okay, but you've disabled my screen sharing, so
I know. Let me fix you back up here. Hold on a
Okay,
sec.
cool.
Okay, hold on.
Are you going back to bed after this, Jason?
No, I've got a full day planned. 4 o'clock is close enough to wake up time.
This is also being recorded also, so if anybody, we'll be sending that out later this week or perhaps next week, depending on when we get it.
Okay, so this top one is actually available online. You can get it as PDFs. I can recommend it quite highly. It is grains as well as fruits and leaf and tuber vegetables. It is quite exhaustive.
Okay, Bart asked for that. He's the director of the Tilden Botanic Garden.
Okay.
So, does anybody else have any questions? Excuse me.
I was just about to say to Bart, he's welcome to contact me. We work quite closely together with other botanical gardens around the world. So, if he needs any, if he has any questions or we talk about material or whatever.
Terrific. Okay.
So I have a question. Maybe you already covered it, but are any of those plants currently commonly used in any parts of Africa, commonly eaten in any parts of Africa?
Look, I'll tell you this. This is the thing about an orphan crop. They're often quite important in restricted regions. So we talk about taro. You guys know taro quite well. It's very important in our eastern coastal regions as a local crop. We call them madumbis. Zulu people call them madumbis. You can buy the tubers on the side of the road. I actually suspect they're growing dryland taro as well as wetland taro, but haven't got around to actually buying enough tubers to be able to tell you 100%. But it's just not important everywhere. Okay, and then there's things like the Livingston potatoes that are still grown in restricted regions in Zimbabwe, but they've virtually disappeared throughout southern Africa because people don't grow them anymore. Then there's things that have become very popular in mainstream cuisine like upon I get it. You know, waterblommetjies is so expensive if you can find them, you know. And everybody knows about them, and you know, so it really does depend from case to case. And some things some things are completely unennobled, like sterculium urix. People know about them only where they grow. Nobody plants them on purpose. Nobody cultivates them. So yeah, it really does depend on a case to case basis.
Jason, are you guys concerned with conservation? You briefly mentioned that in the beginning, and just heard of, I don't know, In Defense of Plants podcast had one about the orchids in Greece and this salal, I don't know, it's a drink that they make out of it, and they're having problems with people collecting them and selling the plants for extremely expensive amounts of money.
Look, I think Kristen can back me up on this. I always try to think of as many aspects of anything as anything that I get involved in. I try to consider these things. Conservation is always very high on my list of priorities. So I'm going to give you an example of exactly what you're talking about, and that is the Mondia whitey. It's an extremely important medicinal plant in many cultures. And we talk about the muti industry. There is concern that the muti industry is often quite destructive. So to the point that Mondia is endangered in KwaZulu-Natal. So here we've got a plant that we are actually planting to be used, and how do I put this? It is being ennobled by being planted to be used. It's conservation through commercialization.
Got it. Okay.
The plant is easy to grow. You know, it's typical Apiaceae. It makes 20 million seed in a season. I know the seeds have got little fluff bits on them, so they spread with the wind. There's no reason why it should be endangered. So if it can be cultivated, then it should be.
Do you have an industry yet that is interested in doing this cultivating and providing it for the markets for the I mean, now of course with COVID nothing happens, I'm sure, but there's a lot of interest in unusual food here, or unusual parts of food. I just use I went to a very high-end restaurant and they made radish leaf pesto. I never thought to make radish leaf pesto. But I'm just saying, and it was quite divine actually. But I just wonder if you have a food industry now that is beginning to do that, so that the demand for these plants goes up, and therefore it's easy to cultivate. But then becomes the question, I'm sure those orchids in Greece have a problem that they need to be in a specified environment. Do you have any plants like that need a particular environment and therefore would be impossible to mainstream, would be my way of putting it?
Yeah, look, there always are those. There's always going to be that. But I'm glad to say that I haven't run into one yet, at least here. We do have people cultivating Mondia. I am glad to say that I have had a lot to do with that. My wife Nikki and I actually, in 2012, we went down to St. Lucia on a holiday, and there was a small local run nursery that was selling grown medicinal plants, but that were sustainably grown, and it was a government funded project. And I brought a few Mondia plants back, which I then planted at the university because I knew about the plant. I just didn't know quite how useful it was. But it turns out that I had 3 clones. So they grew for years and they didn't do anything. Then I got some more clones from Tsenin, which is in Limpopo. And they flowered one year, and then suddenly I realized that they were coming up as weeds everywhere in the botanical garden. Just
Yes.
in one season.
The opposite of
So-
conservation.
Yeah, no. So yeah, so I mean, so it was like, wow, you know. So I mean, I provide seed to anybody who asks. You know, and there are people who are starting to farm it. I've given, I'm sure you guys know Silver Hill Seeds. I've provided them with seed, you know, because since they are our local seed merchants, you know.
Could you
'Cause in
say that
season-
name again of that seed company?
It's Silver Hill Seeds, guys. I'm sure you must know them. So, they are probably our premier seed merchants. Rod and Rachel Saunders, they were tragically murdered a couple of years ago. But the company is,
Okay,
yeah,
Silver. Yeah, okay. We weren't
Yeah.
under. Okay.
Yeah, I give seed to other botanical gardens, you know, because in season, my plants will produce dozens, if not hundreds of pods, and they're all full of seed. So that's just an example. Yeah, you know, orchids, like you say, Kristen, we do have orchids that are used medicinally in Africa. Orchids can be tricky, you know, but nothing used in cuisine, as far as I know.
That's true everywhere. Orchids are very, very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you've got that problem with the ghost orchids in Florida. You know, every now and then something pops up, and I read something about that.
Yeah, these ones in Turkey and Greece, they take the whole plant. So they're harvesting all, you know, the whole plants. And then, of course, breaking up the terrain as they're harvesting all those.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you know, like I say, as mentioned, the traditional medicinal industry, as carried out traditionally, was not harmful, but you know now unsustainable harvesting practices have crept in, and it's much what you're talking about, you know, but with geosuffragexes and so forth. I think anywhere in the world, we have to be conscious of these things that are driving extinction. It's very upsetting.
So the only thing I still want to know about was when I stayed with you, you served me the leaves of an amaranth. You didn't talk about that.
Marojo. Yeah, look, Marojo is a thing. In fact, I think I have pictures. I sent pictures to you guys of one of our red-leafed amaranths at Africa. We have about half a dozen species of amaranth that are used as a leaf vegetable in Africa, in southern Africa. And the one that I fed you is a green leaf variety of what I think is Amaranthus cruentus. And I grow it as a summer leaf vegetable in my garden because it's a weed. It requires virtually no cultivation.
I thought you didn't even grow it. I thought it grows itself.
It did. It does. Trust me.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions for Jason?
The oxalis pescapre, how is that prepared for eating?
You look, it's often in a stew, or at least the tubers are. But you can eat the leaves raw in a salad.
Okay.
Flowers as well.
And what about the
I'm sorry you broke up.
You got muted somehow.
okay, what about the oxalic acid issue, which is, you know, they always tell you to boil chard and because for a while to get rid of the oxalic acid because you develop kidney stones or something if you eat too much.
Yeah,
Dude,
look,
that?
you know, that is an issue. You also have to distinguish between raphides and so forth. But I think the amount that one actually eats is minimal. You know, a few leaves in a salad You're not going to, the taste is quite strong, so you're not going to make an entire salad out of it.
We have lots of it though, so we could have it every night. So that might be a problem.
Yeah, well, perhaps not, perhaps not. But it's still seasonal, so maybe you'll have summer to recover.
It was a treat as a kid when we were children to pull the flowering stem and suck on them. We called it sour grass.
No, that's very similar to the Afrikaans name.
When you speak of low veld versus high veld, are we talking about just above sea level versus mountainous, or, you know, what's the terrain elevations?
Let me, do you mind if we share my screen again?
Oh, sure. I think you just have to share your screen, right? I don't think I turned you off.
Yeah, so I don't have a specific map that might explain it, but I'm going to go back to here. Okay, just you know, indicate with my pointer. So the central and central eastern parts of southern Africa are on a plateau.
Mm.
Okay, and it's a high plateau.
Okay.
You know, it's you know, a couple of 1,000 meters above sea level. It's no joking there. So that's what we talk about, the high veld. There's a granitic dome underneath Johannesburg that's been pushing up for a couple of billion years. You know, so we rather high. So that would be roughly here. So here's your continental dividers here, Johannesburg, Krugersdorp. So we go a little bit further north and east, and you're in Pretoria. You're going down, you're going lower and lower and lower, and lower and lower and lower and lower till sea level. So that's what we talk about. This is sort of your low veld.
Okay.
And we're in the high veld. High veld tends to be drier and colder. Panioticulatus talks about a steep. It's not a word we use much, but it is a good description as any. Whereas low veld is generally higher rainfall, more tree cover, more acidic soils, and generally warmer. And the further north and east you go, the warmer you get until you subtropical and then even tropical.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jason?
No.
Well, thank you,
Yes,
Jason.
I have a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I have a question about the Oxalis caprae. Jason, not sure. I think you said that it's very similar to the one it's not. Is that what you said? And is it not the exact same plant?
It's the exact same plant. It's precisely the same plant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's Oxalis pescaprae. It grows all over the southwestern Cape. I think the thing that makes the ones in California interesting is I believe they're like one clone. I mean, it's maybe two. It seems to have managed to spread itself throughout your area without seed.
I understand it's a pentaploid mutation, so it's sterile, and people have been confused by that, but it's apparently, I have observed also that it makes bulbs above ground as well as under, and the birds have also discovered them, and they go after them with a lot of interest, and they end up moving the bulbs around too. So it's now starting to appear in our wild lands as well as in cultivated areas.
Yeah, we are blessed at the university. The curator of our herbarium is Dr. Kenneth Weberlander, and he's like the Oxalis guy. So, you know, I would refer any questions to him, because if there's something to be known about the genus or the species, he's the guy to talk to. But I know that I have discussed this with him, specifically your clone. The thing about polyploidy in Oxalis is it happens across the board according to him. So you have within populations, you'll have polyploids, diploids, and it just seems that the one that you guys have got is a very vigorous and successful clone. But that is interesting about the above ground bulbs. That's evolution in action.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been working on documenting it because people don't believe me, but I do find them quite regularly above ground late in the season after they've been flowering for a while, just before they go dormant. They start to produce bulbs.
Please, email me with this information. And like I said, Dr. Oberlander would love to hear about it.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Jason, so much for getting up so early. That was a really interesting talk. We really enjoyed it. I will have one more plant to show afterwards, but we'll let you go if, somebody just raised their hand. Somebody else have anything else for Jason?
Let's let him go to bed.
Thank you, Jason.
I'm awake now. There's no time to sleep. It's now 5:30. There's no time to sleep.
Caffeine.
Are you allowed to go out? Because I know COVID has been pretty hard on South Africa too, right?
Well, yes and no. We had a hard lockdown, very strict lockdown. But I don't know, there seems to be some confusion about our numbers, and the deaths do not seem to have been particularly high.
No, good.
Yeah. So no, there's a little bit. There is a lot of discussion as to the impact that COVID has had, but certainly for the lockdown period was very strict. I was permitted under lockdown level 4. We had 5 levels, so level 5, virtually everyone was stuck at home. But level 4, I was permitted to do essential services. My plants do need water and need to be looked after. All I could say is that I think the main effect that COVID has had on design philosophies and landscapes for us is we're just going to keep on going more. The general campus gardens are going to be based more on xerophytic plants in future. We already have a huge planting program of hybrid aloes, which I discussed with your Cacti and Succulent Society earlier in the year. I'd be happy to show you guys some photos of that if you've got 5 minutes. We've got lovely hybrid aloes.
We've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So let's see if the presentation is.
People can drop off if they are not interested.
Yeah. Let me have a quick look. I'll just show you photos. I'm not going to give you the talk.
Okay. And then after Jason is done, I'll show you the one plant that I forgot it for the plant form.
Yeah. So where is that talk? But so we just we came back from lockdown, and wow, our aloes were in full and glorious bloom. Mm-hmm. So we're rather happy with that actually. But I think we can honestly say we have one of the biggest xerophytic planting programs in the southern hemisphere. Okay, am I sharing my screen?
Not yet.
Let's just do it now. There you go. So yeah. So like I said, I'm just going to scroll through the pictures, guys. Yeah. Just to give you an idea of some of the other things that I get up to. So we have been breeding our own aloes for something like 50 years for flowers and form. So there's my green wall, by the way.
Oh,
and so,
cool.
yeah, there's the rainwater garden.
Your water garden is shaded?
There are shaded sections, there's sunny sections, there's sections that are designed to be dropped to model seasonal wetlands. I've got a whole talk on that as well. Yeah, no, I get up to all sorts of things.
Sounds like it.
His brain does not stop.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
So it's nice to talk about the aloes because you know, I could just show lots of pictures and people don't listen to me too hard.
They're very floriferous.
Yeah, that's what they breed for. You know, in you know, you guys have got your breeding programs in the States, Kelly Griffin and so forth, where you breed for form and leaves, and that is great. But for us, aloes are part of our landscape. I mean, we've got aloes everywhere. So if you've grown up in South Africa, you think of winter as aloe season. The aloes are flowering. So when our breeders got hold of these things, that's where they went for. The form and the leaf ornamentation stuff, that's all just a bonus. But you want flowers. I mean, some of these things flower for like 8 months of the year. Like for instance, that plant flowered this year from January, and I think it finished last month. That specific plant there. So, and then you know you get second order effects as well. So for instance, that particular plant there is dead sterile. Doesn't produce pollen, doesn't produce gametes. But because of that, the aloe flower stops producing nectar when it's pollinated. So physiologically, this plant only stops producing nectar on an individual bud when the flower senesces. So we have sunbirds. You guys have got hummingbirds. They're not related, but they have the same niche. I call this thing sunbird crack. The birds will not leave this particular hybrid alone until it's finished flowering. They go crazy for it.
Cool.
Beautiful.
So yeah.
I want it.
All I can say is wow.
Oh my. Beautiful. Those were beautiful.
That was worth it.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jason, so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention, guys. I
Yeah.
appreciate
And good to hear your voice.
Yeah.
Nice
Thank
to
you
see
so
you.
much.
Really appreciate you getting up at that ungodly hour and
It's
hopefully
really
get
it's not a
pressed
problem.
tonight.
It's not a problem. It would have been worse, I think, if it had been 2 a.m. 4 a.m. is at least close enough to a normal wake-up time.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
Okay. So if everybody has,
have a lovely evening.
You too.
thank you.
I'm welcome. If anyone's got any further questions, I'm happy to answer them. But just before I go.
Anything else?
I did have a question. This is Ben. And I wondered about you mentioned that minty potato-like plant, and I was wondering if it's related to Cleome gynandra.
No.
No, but Cleome is a traditional Marojo species. So Marojo is a Tswana word. It means it's essentially any leafy vegetable that you know. So a whole bunch of unrelated plants can be lumped under that category. It's more of a category than a name. So
Okay.
so Cleome is a Marojo in the same sense as the amaranthus that Kristen mentioned just now. It's also a Marojo.
So the botanical name is what now for that? Muchina?
Muchina is, it's like I say, it's an heirloom version of Chinese mustard.
Okay.
Okay, so that is an introduced plant, but it has been grown by the vendor people for generations. It's
Okay,
also
great.
grown up in places like Malawi and so forth. So
Right.
its introduction into Africa is open to debate. It might also have a little bit of hybridization involved with other brassica species.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure, thanks.
Okay, last chance, anybody? Okey doke.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you
again,
very much.
Jason. Okay, everybody, here's the one plant that I forgot. Let me see. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, there it is. Okay. Can you see it almost? Getting there?
Yeah.
Or did I lose it? Can you see you can't see the plant though, can you?
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah. Well, now not.
Oh,
Now
now
we
not.
took it away. It was there before.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me see. Now, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. I can't see it for some reason, but anyway. So this is was sent by Permit, and I can't see the screen, so I
Flowers by the Sea.
there it is. Yes, is that a nursery or I don't know that.
Yes, we had him speak at Cal Hort a few years ago. He's Rosal Salvia's up by Elk.
Okay.
And
Is he open to the public?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think you have to make an appointment, but
I see.
it's far up there. It's an Elk. So, and you have to drive through the fire area right now. So it must be a new hybrid that he's developed though.
I'm thinking of Elkhorn Slough. Okay, so it's up north.
It's up north, yes. Yes, they're up north, up by Mendocino, that area.
Okay. Well, Kermit had sent this, and I assumed he was going to be on the meeting, but maybe he could not make it. But evidently, it's a new salvia, and evidently, it's a hybridizer. So,
Right.
calling it boysenberry, and it sounds like it blooms nonstop, like those aloes almost.
Yeah. His website's pretty amazing if you have a chance to go and look at it.
And it's fbts.com.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else before we sign off? It's been delightful. If anybody has anything for the board meeting, we'd love some feedback on how the Zoom meetings are going, and if you have any suggestions on how to do it better or anything. I appreciate you guys sending your pictures ahead of time so I could put that together. I think that was a little smoother.
Yes, I agree with you, Ellen. I loved what you did. I think it's
Yeah, and
great.
then the names and stuff. So, okay. Well, everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Next month,
Thank you.
who's next month,
Ellen.
Kristen? Who's next
What?
month, Kristen? Who's next month?
Chad Hughesby from Fairchild in Florida. You might want to come and look at it. He's got quite a collection, Jason, but that's another early morning for you.
What's he speaking on?
He's still there.
What's he speaking on?
Yeah, these 4 o'clock in the morning things are tough. I know.
Kristen, what is he speaking on?
Yeah, he's still on. I see his picture.
Yeah. I'm still here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can.
No, I'm still here. No problem. What do you want me to talk on?
no. So if you want, you now are a member for a year, in case you forgot, and you're welcome to come to our Zoom meetings to see the other programs. Chad is going to speak about problems botanical gardens have worldwide now because the collections in some botanical gardens are suffering terribly because of administrative issues and so on. So
that might be of interest to you.
yeah, well, it sounds like you don't have that problem.
You know, it is a point of concern for a lot of my colleagues in botanical gardens worldwide. It's And it is something that is very close to the heart of my department and my particularly my head of department. We talk about plant blindness. I'm sure you guys have heard the term. It gets thrown around a lot. You know, and we just push back as much as we can. Look, you know, I'm lucky in that my institution is incredibly proud of its gardens and allows my input. Yeah, administratively, I'm responsible for about a third of Hatfield campus. That's the old botanical gardens. But I also have oversight on the botanical collections of the larger institution, and that's where I talk about interfering. It isn't that. It is a collaborative effort, and everyone must overlook my gallows humor. But yeah, you know, it's a terrible thing. I think, and it is plant blindness is something that's starting to affect. I don't know if it's just a thing from I don't know. I don't really have any word for it because I've never been blind to nature. Yeah, and I don't think anyone who's sitting in this meeting is blind to nature. So it's a very difficult thing to understand.
Yeah,
I'd say.
okay. Thank you, Jason. Love to see you. Hope to get to South Africa one more time and hope to get you here one more time.
Look forward to it.
Okay. Good night, everybody.